Can you feel it? That chill in the air, the dampness clinging to everything. It's the kind of night best spent curled up inside, listening to the rain lash against the windows. Tonight, we're going to explore those whispers. We're going to delve into the heart of darkness, into the spaces where fear takes root and nightmares bloom. Lights off? Perfect. Let's begin. The year was 1893. A veil of fog clung to the old manor, almost obscuring it from view, as if the house itself were trying to retreat from the world. It had stood empty for years, its windows like vacant eyes staring out over the desolate moors. But that changed when Eleanor, a recent widow still draped in the black fabric of mourning, crossed the threshold. She was seeking solace, a sanctuary from the whispers of society that followed her like shadows. Little did she know, a far more insidious whisper awaited her within those ancient walls. At first the silence was almost comforting. The only sounds were the creaking of the house settling around her, and the relentless patter of rain against the window panes. Then, on the third night, as the grandfather clock in the hall chimed midnight, she heard it. A soft, almost indiscernible whisper, seemingly emanating from the very walls themselves. "Let us out," it seemed to say, the sound like rustling leaves carried on a phantom breeze. Eleanor dismissed it at first, attributing the unsettling sound to the wind whistling through the old house's many cracks and crevices. But the whispers persisted, growing stronger with each passing night. They seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere all at once, weaving their way through the walls, seeping out from the floorboards. "Let us out," the voices pleaded, their tone shifting from a mournful whisper to a desperate plea, laced with an undercurrent of something cold and hungry. Eleanor began to notice the scratching then. It started subtle, a faint rasping sound behind the ornate wallpaper in the drawing. She would press her ear against the wall, her heart pounding in her chest, and listen as the scratching intensified, accompanied by the muffled whispers that sent chills down her spine. One night, unable to bear the torment any longer, driven to the brink by the relentless pleas, Eleanor decided to uncover the source of the unsettling noises. With trembling hands, she peeled back a corner of the wallpaper. The musty scent of decay wafted out, causing her to gag. As she tore down more of the paper, a sense of dread washed over her, cold and suffocating. And then she saw them. Sarah, a bright-eyed college freshman, had always been a pragmatist, someone who dismissed ghost stories and urban legends as nothing more than overactive imaginations and spooky tales told to provoke chills. But that was before she moved into a dorm room, room 13B, a cramped space with peeling paint and a window that rattled ominously in the wind. It started subtly, a feeling of unease, a prickling sensation on the back of her neck whenever she was alone in the room. Then she began to notice it, a shadow darker than the surrounding darkness, lurking beneath her bed. At first she dismissed it as a trick of the light, a figment of her imagination playing tricks on her in the dead of night. But as the days turned into sleepless nights, the shadows seemed to grow more pronounced, more menacing. It felt like a living entity watching her, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. Then came the nightmares, vivid, terrifying dreams that left her gasping for air, drenched in a cold sweat. In these nightmares, she would feel something tugging at her ankles, dragging her towards the foot of the bed, towards the lurking shadow. Determined to prove to herself that it was all in her head, Sarah set up a camera one night, its lens pointed at the foot of her bed. As she lay in bed, her heart pounding in her chest, she kept replaying all the horror movies she had ever seen, her mind conjuring up images far more terrifying than any shadow. When she reviewed the footage the next morning, A knot of dread tightened in her stomach. There, in the grainy footage, just as the clock on her nightstand flickered to 3:03 a.m., a skeletal hand, its bony fingers long and sharp, retreated back into the darkness beneath her bed. Night after night, the ritual continued. The tugging sensation, the nightmares, the skeletal hand appearing in the dead of night, reaching out from the darkness beneath her bed. Sarah felt herself unravelling, her once firm grip on reality slipping away with each passing minute. Desperate for an escape, she decided to move out, to leave the horrors of room 13B behind. As she was packing her belongings, her hands trembling with a mixture of fear and exhaustion, she stumbled upon a diary tucked away in the back of a drawer. It belonged to the previous occupant of the room, a girl named Emily. Chapter 3. The Midnight Train. The legend of the midnight train had haunted the small town of Hollow Creek for generations, passed down through whispers and hushed tones around campfires. It was a tale woven into the very fabric of the town, a chilling reminder that some things are best left undisturbed. It began, as most legends do, with a tragedy. In the winter of 1954, the 11:55 p.m. train from Hollow Creek vanished without a trace. The locomotive, a hulking beast of iron and steam known as the Night Owl, was carrying over 100 passengers, all heading north for the holidays. But it never reached its destination. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and still there was no sign of the Night Owl or its passengers. The authorities conducted extensive searches, but the train seemed to have vanished into thin air, swallowed whole by the dense forest that bordered the tracks. The disappearance of the Night Owl became a cold case, a haunting mystery that cast a long shadow over Hollow Creek. Years later, whispers began to circulate, tales of a phantom train that emerged from the mist that clung to the tracks at the stroke of midnight. It was a spectral replica of the Night Owl, its windows glowing with an eerie, ethereal light. Those who claimed to have seen it spoke of an oppressive silence that surrounded the train, a silence so profound it seemed to suffocate the very air. But the most unsettling detail of these sightings was the passengers. They sat in the train's windows, their faces pale and gaunt, their eyes hollow and lifeless. They were the missing souls from the Night Owl, doomed to ride the rails for eternity, searching for a destination they would never reach. Locals whispered that the midnight train only stopped for those who were already dead, their souls drawn to the spectral locomotive like moths to a flickering flame. One chilling account told the story of a young woman named Clara, who was terminally ill and bedridden in the local hospital. As the legend goes, on the anniversary of the Night Owl's disappearance, Clara awoke to the sound of a train whistle echoing through the night. Chapter 4. The Forgotten Doll. The old Victorian doll had sat untouched in the attic for decades, its porcelain face covered in a thick layer of dust, its once vibrant blue eyes now vacant and staring. It was a relic of a bygone era, a forgotten toy that held within its stitched seams a darkness that would soon be unleashed. Sophie, a curious and imaginative 10-year-old, discovered the doll while exploring her grandmother's attic, a place where sunlight dared not penetrate and shadows danced with the dust motes. The doll was propped up against a chipped teacup, its lacy dress yellowed with age, its once golden curls now brittle and matted. Sophie was immediately drawn to the doll, its melancholic beauty both captivating and unsettling. She carefully picked it up, brushing away the dust, her fingers tracing the delicate features of its porcelain face. As she held the doll, she couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching her, its vacant eyes seeming to follow her every move. That night, Sophie couldn't resist sneaking the doll into her bed. As she drifted off to sleep, she could have sworn she heard a faint whisper coming from the doll, its voice childlike and sweet, humming a lullaby her grandmother used to sing. She dismissed it as her imagination, the lingering memory of her grandmother's comforting presence, but the whispers continued, growing stronger each night. The doll would hum nursery rhymes, its voice a chorus of children, their tones ranging from playful to mournful. Sophie found herself unable to sleep, her nights plagued by unsettling dreams, her days consumed by the doll and its haunting melodies. One night Sophie woke to the sound of the doll singing. It sat perched on her nightstand, its head tilted to the side, its vacant eyes seemingly focused on her. But this time the voice was different. It was deeper, raspy, filled with an underlying menace that sent chills down her spine. "We want to play," the doll hissed, its voice no longer childlike but ancient and evil. Terror gripped Sophie's heart, cold and suffocating. She knew with a certainty that defied logic that the doll was not what it seemed. It was a vessel, a conduit for something dark and sinister. Determined to rid herself of the cursed doll, Sophie decided to destroy it. She snuck out to the backyard, her heart pounding in her chest, the doll clutched tightly in her hand. She built a small pyre, the flames licking at the night sky, their orange glow casting dancing shadows on the surrounding trees. As the doll was consumed by the flames, its porcelain cracking and melting in the intense heat, a plume of black smoke rose into the night sky, twisting and contorting as if alive. When the flames died down, all that remained was a pile of ash. But as Sophie turned to leave, she noticed something chilly. The ashes had formed a message, a single sentence etched in the charred remains. "I'm free." The rain continues to fall, a steady drumbeat against the window pane, a lullaby for restless souls. The shadows have retreated for now, but they haven't gone far. They linger just beyond the edges of our vision, waiting for the opportune moment to creep back in, to remind us that the darkness is always listening. If you're still awake, drop a skull emoji in the comments. Share your own nightmare fuel below. We might feature it next time. Hit subscribe and the bell, because tomorrow's story, it's based on your comments. Sleep well or not.